And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to the Wednesday morning coffee with a kick. We got Robert Watson back in the house. We're talking about chapter 3 in his book, Ars Victorious, coming out really soon here. We're getting close. And we've talked about we talked about the end. It was chapter 1. You guys can go back and watch these again. Blind, we begin with the end, which is great. Blind, which we talked about last week, about making sure that we are not blind to the fact of what's going on around us. And now we're going to do some deep thinking. There's these 13 maxims that you have in the book, Robert, and deep thinking, long-term deep thinking improves short-term decision making, which reading the chapter this morning, it's kind of a bunch of segues into that, where we're creating these things where we don't deep think anymore, right?
Right. We've kind of constructed a world where we're very meme oriented. Everything is 7-second bits and bytes and slices. And so everything is very surface related. And I opened the chapter with, actually sitting under an ice cold waterfall in Pettigene Park. And the idea is that there's an ability to sustain yourself in ice cold temperatures through a certain breathing technique that's a couple thousand years old. I mean, it's not new, but you actually have to understand it and do the research to be able to understand why you're surviving under ice cold water. But that's just really symptomatic of where we are as a culture. And in the book, I talk about dating apps, because what shocks me is that somebody would believe that a dating app was going to bring them closer, when the idea behind the dating app is that the more interplay you have, the more money they make. So what they want to do is get everybody married so they go out of business. That doesn't make any sense. But right. So the dating app is actually meant as a bait and tease. And that's what it does, is it continues to tease you that there's more out there. There's something next. There's something else. And so it becomes a constant tease. But again, if you just go below the surface, you realize, always ask the question, how does it work and why? And people are really skittish about what and why, and really deep questions. And consequently, they get stuck on the first primordial thought, which is, girls, lots and lots of girls on the dating site. Yes. And how are they presented? What are they doing? What's the purpose of it? How do they make money? Begin to understand, you get little dopamine hits to your brain every time somebody likes your page or somebody swipes left. But does it get you anywhere? And the answer is, people are very disgusted with it. And I'm saying, why? They were very honest about what they do. Why are you concerned with them? It's you are the one that need to actually do the research and think your way through it. And people don't.
Yeah, an amazing thing. Some of the things that I thought about as I was reading, I was thinking about it, because we're kind of, you've been married before. And you've been through dating multiple different eras, because for me, like, as I was reading through it, I was thinking about the chapters, like, what did you used to do? Because I've been married 24 years in June. And how did I meet my wife? Well, I talked to my grandma. My grandma took me to church. I met my cousin. My cousin talked to me about his girlfriend. His girlfriend had this friend, and I met her and we got married. But that's kind of what you broke it down in the chapters. Like, we used to go to people about, hey, do you know someone, or you got hooked up with someone, like you ended up getting meshed with someone or matched with someone, not by getting on an app where it's at your fingertips, where you can look at, like, as a guy, you could look at 900 different girls if you wanted to, and take your pick and then have an interaction with them. And if you don't like them, then you can just disappear. But then it was like, you had to actually do the homework. You had to sit down with that person. You had to have a meal with them, have coffee with them, whatever. It's completely different now, though.
Yeah, and the whole concept behind deep thinking is just doing what we call first, second, and third order thinking, which is, the idea is stimulus response. In other words, if I go work out, right, or I choose not to work out, they both have causal relationships, right? If I want to work out because I want to lose weight, be de-stressed, this is the reason or rationale behind working out, and I don't work out, what's the causal link? It's like, well, I won't lose weight, I'll be stressed, all that. But is that all? Is that all that happens? Is there more that goes on? Is there second and third order issues that you have to contend with? People don't think beyond that. It's just a pleasure pain thing. Like, what difference is it going to make if I miss one day? Right? Then
Right.
one day becomes 2, 2 days become 3. Again, habits are funny things, but it's first and second and third order thinking. And that's all I'm basically saying on the dating app is the same thing is you can use social media to connect you with a group of people. Then ask the group of people, hey, you've gotten to know me over the last couple of years. We've connected. Listen, do you know anybody in this age group? I want to date. What are you doing? It's an electronic version of grandma in
Yep.
church, right? That's all. But if you allow somebody to serve you up the 900 girls in a form or fashion where you don't think there's any work to be done, you're you're deluding yourself. And that's where we really end up. And you're still going to have to do the research. You've just got a electronic grandma now.
Right.
You've got a little bit broader base, but that's it.
And I could pretty
Same
much,
old same.
you could pretty much say that, like, if you think about it, like in the end, what are we creating? We're creating a bunch of meaningless relationships with people because you have all these people that become acquaintances. Like in your lifetime, you probably knew if you before the internet, you might know like 10, 20 people that you hang out with on a regular basis, and then you meet new people every once in a while. But with this, you're
Mhm.
just connected in so many different ways, which it's just crazy. Like it's meant to be something that is helpful, but people, instead of using it as a tool, they use it as, the only way.
Right. And again, it's you begin to realize that even if you meet on a dating app or whatever, you still have to go through the same process, right? You get on the phone first, you get to know each other, you go out, you have coffee, you go on a date. Nothing changes, right?
Right.
It's just that you think in your head you've got so many more options, right? And you just have to ask yourself, do you really have so many more options, or are you looking for the same thing? So I talked to my son and a couple other friends about getting you're changing the way you think by deciding that you're going to create 5 non-negotiables that you have to have in a mate. So you say these are the 5 non-negotiables. If they don't have one of the 5, you just basically walk on. And I know that sounds cold and hard, but that's what life is about, right? You're not wanting to hurt anybody's feelings, but you want what you want. And when you talk about things like, emotional intelligence and all that kind of stuff, that's not an unreasonable request from a person you're dating in a kind of romantic forever kind of situation. Emotional intelligence is not something unreasonable to ask, right?
Yeah.
Person's a giver, a taker, you want a giver versus a taker. There's all kinds of little nuances, but again, they're just thinking beyond the surface of that person's really cute. Wow, I like their picture. Oh, I like what they've done, right? And
Yeah.
you stop there. That's not life. I mean, life goes much, much deeper than that. And as you know, you spent 24 years building a relationship with a woman. You have 2 kids,
Yep.
right? That's over time. Can you imagine starting over?
Right. No way. I mean, I've posed that question to myself. If anything ever happened with what was going on, my wife passed away, we got a divorce, whatever, what would I do? And there is no way that I would ever get
Yeah.
married again. Like, I feel like there's the way that this society is right now anyway, it's like relationships typically are not meant to last. Like, that's not the way that they make it. Like, we've gotten to this point where we want to, it's just like TikTok, right? I like TikTok.
Right.
It's not a bad thing, but my attention has become that way. You look at, like, you get the report on your phone that you've spent this much time on screen time, and you're like, man, how did I do that? And we sit there and we are into like really quick dopamine hits, like you're talking about. It's like, oh, wow, that's cool.
Mhm.
Oh, wow, that's cool. Let's keep going. And I just can't see that.
Yep.
Like, I think that dating apps in general, and I've never been on one, but I go back to this. I don't know. It's been probably like 10 years ago. Got my first high school coaching gig, and we're in Portland, Oregon, and I'm with a bunch of different coaches, and we're sitting around having a conversation, out of the 10 of us, and there's like probably 7 or 8 of us engaged in conversation, while the other 3, these younger guys that are married, have kids or whatever, and they're on Tinder when Tinder comes out for the first time, trying to find these people in Portland, Oregon to go hang out with. And it's like, dude, you're married. What are you doing? Like, be in the moment. And they lose these things because they're just like stuck in that. And it's like, oh my gosh, here's some girl, she's shown half of her body or whatever, and I don't know if that's what happens on Tinder or not. Cause like I said, I've never been there, but I just remember I'm just sitting there swiping. And you're like, what would you do?
Yeah.
Now you have choices, you're not looking at the same people.
And again, just digging below the surface, you begin to understand that we're in an overhyped culture, right? And that's just another version of overhype. And if you just scratch the surface and realize that they make all their money off of engagement, so they have no incentive to link you with your forever mate so that you'll get off and close your account. That makes absolutely no sense.
Right.
So they're just trying to put you in a mill of endless possibilities, again, working that dopamine hit. Like, oh, there's somebody new, there's somebody new, there's somebody new, there's somebody new. And it's really, really destructive. But again, people get hooked on it. It's on their phone. They're getting whatever attention they want from whatever it is.
Right.
Oh, somebody likes me. I mean, really? Is that gratifying in some form or fashion? Again, that's just going beyond scratching the surface about what you want out of life and doing some deep thinking. And deep thinking is about strategy, right?
Yeah.
It's about your long-term strategy. Like, if you, like my son, who's in his 20s, right? He's an Army officer in his situation. He's the co-editor of this book. He's in the point of finding a woman who's not just a life partner, but the mother of his children, right?
Right.
So this woman has to be his partner up front, the mother of his children, the steward of those children, right, along with him, and then his partner once they survive raising kids. As you now know, that raising kids is kind of an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
And so when he goes a little deeper than I'm attracted to her or she's attracted to me, when he goes a little deeper and starts hunting for the things that he believes will be solid, okay, that's really deep thinking, because he now has to go beyond just getting that very temporal, visceral feel of she's beautiful, she's wonderful. Well, hold on a second. Does that necessarily make her the mate for you? And does that make her the mother of your children? And so you all of a sudden go into second or third order thinking is, wow, it gets much, much deeper than that. And so he's figuring that out, and that's a process. And, your process, you talk about on the front end that you got married 24 years ago, you wouldn't want to have to date now. It's, again, another process, a different phase in life, right? We're past the children. So people, believe it or not, are dating, get this one, dating with children and without children, meaning there's people that are dating each other. One has children, one doesn't. And they think that somehow they're going to connect. And my point to them is, how? You have very different lives. You are sacrificing for your children. You're a different human being than the person that hasn't had children. It's no knock on the person that hasn't had children. But the reality is, children change you.
Yeah.
They absolutely change you. And so that personality comes different. And how will they ever understand what you go through for your children? They won't. How? They've never been there.
Yeah.
That's not something anybody will understand. Having children is not something somebody will understand by reading it. Right?
Yeah, and I've watched a lot of times. I have multiple friends, and I have a family member that has kind of like this blend. Well, both my brothers both kind of have somewhat of a blended family.
Right.
My little brother's been married a couple times. He's had a couple times. He's had kids with 2 different families, but everyone he dates usually has kids, and then they don't raise their children the same way. They get in disagreements about the way that one can punish one. My older brother has an adopted child where, it's a little bit different than the 2 kids that he has with her, because it's not really his kid, but it is his kid, and he's raised him since he was little. I mean, there's just these things that just you don't understand. You don't get that connection that the other person gets. And it's crazy. There's I don't understand how. I don't know. I mean, it's just weird. Like if you're in a relationship, like what I've observed anyway is like if you're in a relationship with someone and you don't have kids or you have kids with another person, and then you decide that you're going to have kids with that second person, that your first child really doesn't take precedence over the other two, and they don't have the same kind of bond with that kid, even though they come into the marriage saying, "I'll treat him as if it's mine," right? And it never works that
Right.
way. I've never seen it work that
Right.
way.
Well, and I just had this discussion last night with a very close friend. She and I were talking about the non-negotiables that you want to have when looking for a potential partner, right? A romantic partner.
Yeah,
But it's also the same kind of relationship with friends, but the romantic partner adds other dimensions, right?
right.
And so I normally like people to have 5 non-negotiables, but she came up with a 6th one. She said, the person needs to accept my children, number 1, and number 2, understand I don't want any more children. Because she's kind of in that gap at 36 where she could still have another child, and the people she's dating may not have children or may want another one. And so one of her non-negotiables is not only do you have to fit into my family, but we're not going to enlarge the family either. So
Right.
if you want kids, I'm the wrong person.
Yep.
So again, that becomes a cutoff. And she said she was on a dating profile, and she said she put that on the profile, and guys didn't read it. They didn't pay attention.
Right.
They get
Well,
into the
because
third or fourth date.
it's visual.
Right. It's just, oh, you're so beautiful. And then they get into like the fourth date, and they talk about children. And they said, yeah, I want children. She goes, did you not read my dating profile? No more children. In other words, you just literally wasted 4 days of my
Yep.
time. Right. And that's the reason you put it out there. And I said, you can't assume people are going to read or do filtering for themselves. You have to assume you need to do it yourself. You need. One other girlfriend, she's really, really neat. She had a hysterectomy, right? So she can't have kids. She
Right.
puts it on there. And she said, you'd be shocked how many guys would come on. Well, I think I still want kids. And she goes, really? Did you read my dating profile at all? No,
It's
not at all.
it's the thing though. It's just like you said, it's that really, it is a visual thing, and you're not going to read, like people don't read anymore. Like you have to really, you got to find that person. People didn't read before. I mean, it's one of those deals where I went to college. I got 2 degrees. I think we've had this conversation before where I
Right.
had 2 degrees and I didn't read a damn book, but I got the 2 pieces of
Yeah.
paper that said that I read lots of books. So, I mean,
then I'm a scholar, matter of fact.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, I've read
Right.
more in my after college career because I've realized that there's more meaningful material than what they were presenting to me. They just presented it to me because their name was on it and they made $1 off of it. It's like, it's crazy, but yeah. I mean, they're looking, like you said, they're looking at visually. And the funny thing about that is, we used to teach kids who, like I was a PE health teacher, and I remember in my health class talking about propaganda and how they show you these magazines. Like, I mean, every guy my age when they were in high school had a Cindy Crawford poster on the wall. Well,
Yep.
she was the exception, not the rule, and we've all created this is what we want. But does that necessarily make a good mate, someone that you can spend the rest of your life with? Just because they're good looking doesn't mean that, like you said, you've got to have more than just, hey, I'm just looking for a good looking wife. There has to be these things that you have to decide what they are. And you can't, we all are very visual and we look at it,
Right.
and that's how we pick. And that just doesn't always make it work the best way.
Yeah, it's also interesting because I try to tell people now when I start offering to work with them from a strategy standpoint. I said, would you do me a favor when you get your 5 non-negotiables? Okay, you are now on Let's Make a Deal. There's door number 1, door number 2, and door number 3. You have been selecting door number 1 because you happen to like tall, blonde guys. That's your door number 1. So you don't really look at door number 2 and door number 3 because you like tall, blonde guys. However, every time you pop out door number 1, you don't get what you want. Can we go ahead and take the non-negotiables and start literally choosing door number 2 deliberately just for difference?
Right.
And I'm saying because when you get to the substance of somebody, you might say, wow, I'm really attracted to who the person is inside, not just to the outside. And what a shock that they might, in my son's case and my other friend's case, they're both dating people they would not naturally choose from the physical appearance.
Right.
They're beautiful, but they're not their redhead, blue eyes. That was not. They're not in that gap
Right.
that they used to pick. And my point is, are you sure that's what you want? Or are you just being visceral? Okay. Again, is it just the initial Cindy Crawford? Everybody wants Cindy Crawford. Well, mine was Farrah Fawcett, if that kind of pulls you back in time. Right.
We all have.
But again, right. But everybody had a poster on their wall idealizing a girl that doesn't necessarily give you what you want out of life. And somebody you really do love and find beautiful, sexy, and all that kind of stuff. But again, you have to be able to think and go, I've been choosing door number 1. It's time to choose door number 2 and door number 3 deliberately.
Yeah.
Right. Just to experience outside the box. And that requires thinking, that requires intention. And people just stare at you like, well, why would I do that? Well, mainly because you've been losing over and over again. Yeah. Or if you're the Dallas Cowboys, you're trying to figure out how not to lose in the first round of the playoffs over and over and over again. Right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
But again, when you sit there and watch the tape, not to get too far off on football, but if you watch the tape, you realize a lot of their stats are garbage stats. Why? Why are they called garbage stats? They're in the late part of the game where it doesn't matter, right? Where you're just racking up yards. So what happens is inflates what your ability to do things are, instead of looking at your ability to convert third downs, instead of looking at your ability to convert third downs against winning teams,
right?
Not losing teams, right? There's ways to figure out why a team, because you got 2 powerhouse teams that both went out of the playoffs by 9 and 8 teams. Yeah. Teams barely over 500 didn't beat you. They blew you out.
Yeah.
So you can see really, really intelligent people with models that don't work because they haven't thought their way beyond the very skin deep of the issue. I mean, I'd love to give Jerry Jones a little consulting that says, geez, really, Jerry? Really? We've been doing this since Jimmy, okay? And that takes us back a little ways, okay?
Yep.
We've been doing this since Jimmy. What are you doing wrong that you're doing over and over again? Because you are doing something wrong over and over again.
Yeah.
Again, FYI. Just same kind of thinking, right? And people are like, well, no, it's just the little dumb person over there. No, that's a multi-billion-dollar company that can't seem to get out of their own way.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I never really thought about it that way. But if you think about that, I mean, like late in the game, they're making things happen when everyone's tired. They haven't given everything they got, and they are doing the razzle dazzle stuff where they can make stuff happen. I mean, it's showing up late to the game type of scenario.
Prevent defense are too deep safeties. Geez, you can throw over the middle. What a shock! Really? I mean, you almost never. Come on, man. You're in a prevent defense, and you don't think you can throw a 15-yard in. Of course you can, all day long, right? Oh, and you can just march it down the field because they're going to let you do it because they're going to trade time for yardage, right? They're just going to let you wear yourself out. But again, we all know this, and it's odd because you see people doing it over and over again, and you're like, what is wrong with them? And the answer is they won't go beyond the visceral beginning thought process of, you know what our problem is? Our problem is coach. Our problem is this. Our problem is that. No, Jerry, your problem is management. That's you, bud. Yeah. You've changed coaches. You've changed quarterbacks. Okay. What's the common denominator left?
I was going to say, yeah, this is the one thing that is, maybe it's time to do. I mean, you look at like the Raiders. It's the same thing with Al Davis. Like, nothing's happened. Al Davis Jr. or whatever. It's like, we got the same thing.
Yes.
We changed it. It's Bill Belichick. I mean, the Patriots are going through the same thing. It's like, okay, here we go. He's done the same thing for 25 years or however long he's been the coach of the Patriots, and now all of a sudden it's not working. It worked really good for a while. But
when they had one little coach that happened to play a position on the field,
exactly,
who was almost a coach on the field,
Yeah.
And I can go to the Peyton Manning and the Aaron Rodgers and the Tom Brady. I can go to all of them and say the same thing. If you watch those guys in practice, they're the ones talking to receivers, not to coaches.
Yep.
Right? They're the ones they're the ones coaching, they're the ones changing the plays. That's a different skill.
Yeah.
And so I think
when you have a person like Michael Jordan or Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or like those people that actually are running the team, it makes things different for sure.
Oh yeah, and I think we can go ahead and answer the Belichick Brady question now.
Yeah.
Right? Not that we're going off on sports, but really, I think we've answered the question. Who went off and won a Super Bowl and who can't get to 500?
Interesting.
I'm just saying.
And who's been searching for that guy for the last 5 years? I can't find him.
Right. So, what is the magic to what made the Chiefs the Chiefs? Right? Andy Reid's a fantastic coach, no question. Maybe Patrick Mahomes?
Well, I mean,
maybe gave a
the
little
proof
magic.
Is in the pudding. Look at the Eagles when he was there. I mean, it's the same thing. Like he had mediocre quarterbacks that, I mean, and one can argue that Donovan McNabb was really good, but on the same token, like he wasn't as good as the next guy. He still couldn't make that.
Well, happen. I mean, give him credit for getting to multiple Super Bowls. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Right? Didn't have what it took to get over the hump, but he went to multiple Super Bowls. I mean, Jim Kelly, you could argue the same thing, went to multiple Super Bowls.
Yeah.
That's still a pretty big deal, right? You've accomplished a lot. And that's what you're trying to do in any kind of strategy is you're trying to say, okay, let's look at the pieces of any strategy and try to make them better. And I talk about, strategy, ability, and fearless execution. Do you have the ability? You could have a great strategy, but you don't have the personnel to execute it, right?
Yep.
And then you're not fearlessly executing it. So you have to have those components in there. And we have to be able, you could say, my strategy is I want to start a business and I want to be able to fly between my locations. And my response to you is you better learn how to fly.
Yep.
And you would, well, what do you mean? I said, well, the plane's going to require a pilot. You're going to hire one or you're going to fly it? Well, then you better get after flight training. That's called an ability or a skill, right? That's part of the process that you're trying to do when you're looking at things in real deep terms. You're just going through the paces of saying what you need to accomplish. It's like, for example, go back in time and when Coke decided that they needed to change the formula for Coke.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what genius idea came up with that? You literally have people buying something for a taste and you decide you're going to change it?
Yep.
Really? How smart was that?
And
it was like, no, it's a brilliant idea. We're innovating. I'm like, okay. You see these classic mistakes and afterwards they're taught in business school, like it's a revelation to them that it was such a mistake. And you're like, huh? Why is that a revelation to you? Why was that shocking? It's not like saying you couldn't bring out Diet Coke or something else, but why would you change your original recipe and brand?
Yep.
To me, that makes absolutely no sense.
Well, and to tie this, we're just about out of time here, but to tie this all back into the dating thing, I mean, that's the thing. That's where we're at. Like, if you look at historically, if this type of dating is better, then why are more people divorced? Why are more relationships lasting less time? Why is it not, producing the same results that a traditional type relationship created?
Right. And again, that's the proof in this supposed pudding is what? Long-term committed relationships.
Yep.
Not more dating. But in theory, think about it. They didn't say they were marriage apps. They said they were dating apps.
Yep.
So I guess in theory, they are actually delivering on their promise. More dates.
Yeah, they're not lying to you.
No, they're really not. You're just projecting onto them that dating means permanency and committed.
Yep.
Basically, they're just saying, listen, I'm just going to aggregate everybody together. They're just an aggregator,
yep.
Right? That's all they're doing. They're just aggregating for you. And it's up to you to go do the work. And people are thinking, no, that's because their algorithm matches us. And I'm like, I don't think so. But okay.
Nope.
Yeah.
Well, definitely an interesting topic. And I look forward to breaking down the next chapter too. I mean, relationships are one of those things that we all have to build, and it's amazing to think on that level. So next week we'll be talking about rewarding. That's the next maxim and the next chapter. But I look forward to it. I mean, this has been fun, and I accidentally forget to hit the live button this time. So if you guys are listening to this, because I'm posting this on YouTube right after we get done, make sure you tune in next week. It'll be live, because I don't know what I was thinking, but we'll talk about that.
It happens.
Yep. All right, Robert. Well,
Thank
let's
you,
talk
Wes.
about it. We'll reconvene next week, and we'll dive into the next one.
Thank you, bud.
All right. All right, everyone. Until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.